I want to talk about unconditional love. Sometimes you want to love someone and they're not in a vibrating place to accept it.
Yes, there's another way of saying this that's so much easier for you. And it isn't sometimes, it is always you want to love. And some of those buggers are just not lovable. So what you have to do is find one who is. Because it isn't fair to you and it isn't fair to them. When you say, I need you to be different so that I can love, they might if they could, but it doesn't work, does it? Unconditional love means I'm going to love regardless of the conditions because there's enough on this buffet that I can enjoy that I don't need the calamari to be gone or different than it is. I can find something else that I enjoy. And so the conditions can remain the same and I can still be pleased.
Right.
So the same thing is true of unconditional love of others. In other words, if I can't find anything in that one to love, then I can look over there. And as I've looked over there and I've maintained my connection to Source and my connection to love, now I am a lover, and in that vibration I may even be able to find something to love in the one who formerly I couldn't find anything to love. Here's the answer to this, and this is the most significant thing to know. Everyone is like the universe at large. There is that which is wanted and lack of it in every particle of everything. So even in those who are in a strong place where they've activated something that makes it very hard for you to love them, like maybe they're not loving you in the moment, or maybe they're acting out, as we were talking earlier, in some sort of violent way. When you say, I cannot love under this condition and I need so much to love, so you've got to change the condition, we say, no, because you don't need to love them in order to love.
Right.
You still have the ability to love. And so as you choose something through the path of least resistance or the path of most allowance that is easier to love, in time, once you really get back into that vibe of love, you can find lovable things even about that one who is predominantly projecting unlovable things.
Well, first of all, I've learned that it's hard for people to love someone when they don't love themselves. And
so that's true, but blah, 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 blah. In other words, and the reason that we're making fun of that is because so someone is rude to you and you have a knee-jerk response to that, and then you say, well, if I was really tuned in, tapped in, turned on, then even though you're mistreating me, it wouldn't bother me so much. And we say, if you're really tuned in, tapped in, turned on, the universe would not put you together for this abuse.
It's not really abuse, in a sense. I don't feel abused with this person in any way. It's almost like, can you be with somebody if they're not always happy? Because what you do is like, you work so hard on always being happy within yourself, right? You always want to feel good. And someone who always wants to feel good, maintain a relationship with someone who has a hard time.
Well, it is possible if you get really good at directing your thought and you feel your pockets full of things that feel really good. But we want to give you something here in light of what we talked about earlier. In other words, when you feel awful, let's say someone's really hurt your feelings and you just feel awful, and you really want to adore them, and you really want them to adore you, and you really want it to be like it was that time. Or you really want it to be like it was in that moment when you discovered that you were in love with this person. You really want to feel like that, not like this. But you can't get to there from there, not right now, not this red hot minute, because there's something else activated within you. And so what we're wanting you to do is start letting yourself off the hook as you reach for the emotions that feel a little better, 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 until eventually you get there. And the thing that makes this interaction so valuable in what you're evoking here is that if you are determined to be selfish enough to want to feel good, so that even though you can't change the circumstance, meaning you can't change this person's mood, not this minute, and it's not your job to do it, and even though you want to do it and you couldn't do it, but if you want to be selfish enough that you want to feel good, so that you're reaching for anything that feels a little better, and maybe just being mad feels a little better than being hurt. And then maybe feeling not so mad feels a little better than being so mad. In other words, you just do the best you can to find a feeling that gives you just a little more breathing space. And then, in the process of you making that transition, those that are close to you often make it too. But if you say to someone, I was a happy person before I hooked up with you, and now you're bringing me down, even if they would like it to be different, they don't know what to do because they don't want to be unhappy either. They just don't know what to do. And now you've saddled them with all this responsibility that not only are they unhappy, but they're making somebody that they love unhappy. And so then they usually resort to the mechanism that we're trying to teach you here is they just get mad because it feels better to them to be mad than to feel bad, you see. So let us recap what we're saying here. So you want love, and in this moment you don't feel like you're getting it. Or you want to communicate or be one, and in this moment you feel separate. Or you want a relationship with someone who can make you happy, but what you really want is to be happy. And it feels like you're making a choice. I can choose this person, or I can choose happiness, but I can't have both at the same time. And we want to say to you, you can't have both at the same time, but your happiness has to matter the most. Now, we don't want you to say to this person or even to yourself, I want so much to be happy that I'm not ever going to think about you. But we want you to be able to change your thoughts enough that you can show yourself, I'm going to be all right here. I can be all right here, because there is nothing more suffocating than to feel like you can't control your thoughts and like your thoughts are painful. That's the most suffocating feeling in the world. And when you show yourself, I can find thoughts that give me space, even under these conditions, then you are absolutely free. And then you have the capacity to mine this experience for all the delicious stuff that would be there, you see. We're not really big on encouraging people to go into miserable relationships and try to make them better. We have to say to you that you attract from where you are, and there is much, much, much good stuff that you wanted that was there. In other words, all of your hopes and dreams do have the potential of being satisfied. You just don't have to eat the calamari. You can eat the other stuff on the buffet. Or if you like calamari, then go for it. Make sense?
Yeah. Thanks.
Yes. Now what?
Awesome. I wanted to say to you, Jerry, that I hope those tapes come forever because I'm really addicted to them. And one of my favorite words is savor. And the savoring part is the anticipation of getting those tapes in the mail every week. Who cares about the bills? I just want my tape. And I have a house cleaning business, and I listen to those tapes like 7 hours a day. And I was just a little bit...
Have you listened to the tape on addiction?
Well, I know there's positive addiction, so I took it to my man. Anyway, my question is, how do I learn to be more selfish and enjoy it and really feel good about being selfish? And I know on one of your things you said about you learn all this stuff, how to deliberate create, and you don't have to worry about those that aren't. And it's still that little part of me, like I can manifest stuff, but it's always part of I want to give it away and like feeling the worthiness that I can surrender and go deep into what I'm creating and enjoy it and don't have to feel guilty about it. So that's what I want to know.
Well, let's take the word selfish to its ultimate place. Of course, there is no ending to anything. We could even get more selfish, but here is the ultimate place that we would like to take it. We want you to be so selfish that you want to feel good under any and all conditions. That's the ultimate selfishness. I'm so selfish. I'm so aware of self. Think about what we're talking about. You are a physical extension of Source. So the ultimate selfish experience would be to truly allow self to be in this moment, in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. In other words, you're not wanting to be selfless. You're not wanting to be without self. You're wanting to be full of self. And the way you be full of self is by deliberately choosing thoughts that feel good. So when you condemn yourself, you're not full of self. When you worry about somebody else, you're not full of self. When you worry that you're greedy, you're not full of self. When you worry that they're incapable of having what they want, you're not full of self. So when you are ultimately selfish, which means you ultimately want to feel good, then you're always you're making the best of every thought or of every moment. Every now and again, Jerry and Esther will rendezvous with someone who is in a place of particularly pointed need, and they'll help them out in some way, even though they hear us say that there is a little bit of trouble that surrounds the idea of, I do this for you because I see you cannot do it for yourself. But still there is this desire to uplift and this desire to be of value. And sometimes you'll meet someone and it feels like the universe puts you together for a reason, and often that's true. In other words, everyone that you meet, you are there for a reason. And so Jerry and Esther were at a lovely campground, and the satellite dish would not work for her internet because the trajectory is too far up in the northwest. And so Esther was using the telephone hook up in the laundry room. And so she had gone in to check email, and a very nice woman stopped by and said to Esther, may I please reach past you and get the phone book? And Esther played with her a little bit about the immense trouble it was for her to move back a foot. And the woman took the book, and then she said to Esther, I could tell that you would not harm me. I saw your lovely earrings, and I knew that you would not harm me. And Esther laughed, and it turned out that they are selling gems at Gems and Minerals shows. And so Esther's beautiful earrings caught her eye, and right away Esther really, really liked this woman. And then the woman explained that she was looking in the phone book because the truck that they used to tow the trailer that was parked in the park not far from Jerry and Esther, something had gone terribly wrong with it. And it was going to cost a fortune to put it back together and make it run, and they weren't even sure if they could make it run. They had really overloaded this poor truck, and it was not likely that it was going to run. And Esther had already, before she even knew what was going on, had fallen in love with this sweet girl. And so now Jerry came in, and the four of them are visiting and talking. And when Esther went back to the coach, she said, what do you think? You think we could just give them enough money that they could get into a different vehicle so that they're not stranded here forever? And Jerry said, that's a good idea. And so they did. And it felt like the perfect thing to do. It felt like the next logical step. But there were some little twinges of something uncomfortable that Esther could not really identify, but she overrode it by projecting herself into that situation and imagining how, even though she would rather do it herself, and even though she loves knowing that she is the creator of her experience, what's wrong with being the creator of your own experience and attracting someone who has some money? In other words, Esther sort of struggled with it and worked it out and made herself feel wonderful, and the couple was very grateful. And before Jerry and Esther even left the park, they had a beautiful new vehicle, and they were all bright and shiny and on their way. And Esther and Jerry both felt, on the whole, that it was mostly the perfect thing to do. And it felt better to think that it was the perfect thing to do than to think that it was not so much the perfect thing to do. But while they were in Spokane, someone stole the spare tire off their Tahoe, which has never happened before. They've never had anyone take anything from them. And Esther said, that little vibration was active in us. In other words, that vibration of you have needs and I have means. You have needs that I could fill. And then Esther and Jerry stood back, and they're looking at the Tahoe, and they are realizing that there are any number of things that some needy person might need from their Tahoe. In other words, is this really the path of least resistance that we are wanting to open for everyone? We would have encouraged Jerry and Esther to have been so selfish that they insisted on feeling good about their action regardless of the action. In other words, we think that whether they gave someone some money or not is neither here nor there. We do not think that that is the topic of discussion. We're talking about your vibrational stance while you do it, you see. And so anything that says, I am less than I want to be, is not a good vibrational stance. And anything that says, and I notice that you are not as much as you are wanting to be, is not a good vibrational stance either. And so the most selfish stance is actually the most helpful stance, which is we are all capable of doing whatever we are wanting, and it really doesn't matter a whole lot how it unfolds. Okay. So when you feel like doing something, and it really feels much more good than it feels not good, then it's the right thing to do. In other words, you've rendezvoused there. There's nothing wrong with having a co-creative experience. In other words, everything is about give and take.